Thank you. Yes, no thronging, please. Thanks so much, Gene. And thanks for coming, everyone, to this evening. It's a pleasure to be here at the library and the Cullman Center, which has once again succeeded in bringing to publication an outstanding work of literature. The first Tycoon takes its place this year as the biography of record of one of the greatest and most neglected figures in American business history. Cornelius Vanderbilt's career in shipping, railroads, and finance spanned an incredible epoch in the industrial development of this nation, from the very beginnings of steam-powered transportation to the tying together of the entire North American continent in a steel web of rail. As T.J. Stiles writes, few 19th century businessmen equaled Vanderbilt in his impact on American history, and of those who did, arguably none proved to be so influential at so fundamental a level over a period so formative or so long. Born in 1794, the Commodore lived to be 82 and played a significant role in so many of the leading events in his tumultuous life, from the very beginnings of steamboat travel on the Hudson River to the seminal Supreme Court case, Gibbons v. Ogden, establishing the federal government's right to regulate interstate commerce and destroying the remnants of feudal culture in America, to transatlantic travel, the California gold rush, and the growth of the United States into a continental nation, the start of travel across Central America and the planting of the seed that was to become the Panama Canal, the crushing of the notorious American filibuster William Walker in his attempt to abscond with the country of Nicaragua, the destruction of the Confederate ironclad Merrimac and the safeguarding of the Union's gold shipments, both of which played a seminal part in winning the Civil War, the fabled stock manipulations of the Erie Railroad and the birth of the modern corporation, the consolidation of the great New York rail lines into the enormous New York Central and Hudson River Railroad, the growth of New York City into the first city of America, and a major world hub of finance and trade, complete with its first Grand Central Station. Vanderbilt played a major part in all of these events and more. As Stiles writes, the Commodore's life left its mark on Americans' most basic beliefs about equality and opportunity. He started in business as the very epitome of the Jacksonian ideal, the working man desiring only a level playing field to compete against the vested interests. He ended it as a symbol of inequality and monopoly in the Gilded Age, one who made Americans question for the first time the dangers of gigantism in business. He was instrumental in acquainting Americans with the very idea of the modern corporation, of an enormous depersonalized business entity. When Cornelius Vanderbilt was a young man, Americans worked almost exclusively as farmers and small businessmen, and what money they saw was mostly solid coin. Corporations were a rarity. Entities of limited duration formed mostly to complete large public projects, such as roads or canals, before being disbanded. By the time Vanderbilt died, Americans had been introduced to paper money and stocks and bonds and even more abstract representations of wealth, even if they were still uneasy about it and getting more uneasy all the time. Vanderbilt's own life served as an epic within the epoch. He started out as a teenage farm boy with a few years of grade school education, sailing a homemade ferry across New York Harbor from Staten Island. By the time of his death, he was estimated to be the second richest man in America, with a fortune of roughly $100 million. To give you an idea of what that meant, Stiles writes that if Vanderbilt had somehow been able to liquidate his entire estate, he would have received $1 out of every $9 then in circulation. By way of comparison, if Bill Gates, worth $57 billion at the height of his pre-crash wealth in September 2008, had been able to liquidate all of his estate, he would have been entitled to $1 out of every $138 then in circulation. He did not come by this money easily. Vanderbilt was a tough, capable, and stunningly intelligent man, and his life was one of almost constant competition. He fought in almost every arena then available, from fistfights on the New York docks to racing his steamboats up the Hudson, to filing and defending himself in countless lawsuits, to battling for the business of dozens of steamship and rail lines that ran from Connecticut to California, London to Panama, to launching endless coups on Wall Street and in corporate boardrooms, to whipping his prize trotters on against his fellow sportsmen along the upper reaches of what was then the Bloomingdale Road. Contests that went on at least two occasions in his old age left him pitched out headfirst on the road in what looked to be fatal accidents. He was a hard man who was hard on those around him, including a wife he seems to have driven to a sanitarium, sons-in-laws who served as his personal minions but who felt the need to constantly prove their worth lest they be thrown over, daughters who snubbed his second wife and bitterly contested his will, a son who suffered a nervous breakdown and put up with all manner of insults from him to win his confidence and his place as his successor, and two more sons who lived tragic lives and never did gain his approval. He was also a man capable of love, of great works of charity in the last years of his life, and even of sentiment, as witnessed by his repeated attempts to contact old friends and loved ones through seances. It is both a great personal and a public story, and T.J. Stiles has done a magnificent job of guiding us through a life crowded with events and with a wonderfully colorful supporting cast full of such Dickensian names as James Banker, Henry Clews, George Law, Fernando Wood, Frank Work, Salmon Chase, Daniel Drew, Big Jim Fisk, Jay Gould, Emily Thorne, Amasa Stone, Curtis Peck, Tennessee Claflin, Victoria Woodhull, Erastus Corning, Ponciano Corral, Chauncey Depew, Horace Greeley, A. Oakey Hall, Augustus Schell, John Preen, Azariah Booty, Orondates Moran, am I pronouncing that right?
That's right.
Orondates Moran, and Horace Clark, to name just a few. In short, it's a terrific read. Sir James Parton once wrote of the young Thomas Jefferson that, along with his command of 5 foreign languages, he could calculate an eclipse, survey an estate, tie an artery, plan an edifice, try a cause, break a horse, dance a minuet, and play the violin. In the same vein, one could say that Cornelius Vanderbilt could design a steamship, sail it over open ocean and jungle rapids, race a champion horse, run a shipping line, consolidate a railroad, short a stock, raid a corporation, lobby a president, build a rail depot, found a university, and raise an army.
And all before lunchtime.
That's right. just this juxtaposition of skills, I think, says a great deal about what America became in Vanderbilt's time and who ran it. But I think also in view of what's gone on in the country's economy and on Wall Street over the last few months, viewing General Motors' amended plan for its own rescue, for example, in which it actually revised the miles per gallon its future cars are expected to get downward. Anyone seeing that and comparing these executives with their bonuses for going bankrupt, I think is tempted to look at a Vanderbilt or a Morgan or a Carnegie or a Henry Ford and ask, what happened? How did we go from that to this?
Well, I'm going to do what presidential candidates do at debates, and first say thank you for having me here. As Gene mentioned, I was a fellow at the Cullman Center, and it was an incredible experience without which my book wouldn't have been possible. And so thanks very much to the staff, including the manuscripts department, a lot of whom are here, who do such superb work. So just want to make that very important thank you. That difference, that transition, is visible during Vanderbilt's life. And one thing I point out that Vanderbilt himself was both a pioneer paving the way toward the corporate future and also in some ways a representative of an older business world. He was sort of the merchant prince of the Medici mold, as I put it. And by creating this huge corporation, the New York Central and Hudson River Railroad, it was, I think, in many ways the kind of pioneer of the giant depersonalized corporations we've been talking about. But his primary rival for largest and most important corporation was the Pennsylvania Railroad, one of the 4 primary railroads in the country after the Civil War, called the trunk lines. And the Pennsylvania Railroad is very interesting because its managers represent very much kind of the modern model of management. And their managers were Andrew Carnegie's mentors. Thomas A. Scott, who was superintendent, then vice president, then president of the railroad, and J. Edgar Thompson. And Vanderbilt was someone who purchased a controlling share of the stock in the corporation, moved into management, and then what he would do is he would not take a salary. He would take only remuneration through dividends on his stocks.